Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, and welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down. Better dig deep and put 'em in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. Ooh, they're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
Hey, folks, it's been a while since I had the opportunity to be here in the chair with producer Chad. We've both been all over the country. This past week was very exciting. I got to speak at the 47th annual National Conservative Students Conference, sponsored, put on by the Young Americas Foundation up in Washington, D.C. Nothing like being in a banquet hall, a room with some 500 to 550 conservative college students, and we got to support them because of the fight that they're on at their college and university campuses. They're fighting against their peers. They're fighting against these professors. They're fighting against the administrations, and so it's great to be with them and to encourage them. Then also, I had the opportunity to go up to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, meet with the Pennsylvania Police Alliance, talking to them about the fact that the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, all over the country are bringing lawsuits against law enforcement agencies for enforcing the law. That's how stupid it's gotten in the United States of America. So several of these offices, constable offices, who are getting picked on by the ACLU because guess what? They're working with ICE under the 287G program. They're doing what is necessary to get criminal illegal immigrants off the streets. ACLU is not happy about this. I thought the A in ACLU stood for American. See, this is the thing. When I hear these Democrat Marxists, members of Congress talking about their constituents and referring to people that are here illegally, like Senator Chris Von Hollen traipsing off to El Salvador, that Maryland man, Abrego Garcia, just dumb. Or you hear them, we have to come in and, check on our constituents at these ICE detention facilities. Those aren't your constituents. Those are the people that are terrorizing your constituents. But somehow the Marxists, the leftists, they got this all upside down. They got it all backwards. To include these judges. I mean, all of a sudden now you got judges wanting to, shut down the alligator Alcatraz. It violates environmental protections. What? It's an airstrip out in the middle of the Everglades. It's not doing anything. I mean, if the governor of the state of Florida said it's okay to have this in the Everglades, then who is this? Again, another district judge that is operating outside of their jurisdiction, trying to interfere in a domestic security issue. President Trump just signed an executive order declaring these Mexican cartels for what they are, transnational narco-criminal terrorist organizations. He has now designated them as a terrorist organization. I don't think it won't be long before some, Democrat member of the House or the Senate or some district judge comes out and says, well, you can't really do that to them. You can't use military force against a terrorist organization. I'm just waiting to see what the president says about this whole crime and criminality issue in Washington, D.C., getting totally out of control. And now he's talking about federalizing D.C. and bringing safety and security there. I think the people in Washington, D.C. would like that. I think the tourists that go to Washington, D.C. would like that. I think that a congressional intern was shot and killed just recently in Washington, D.C. I think his parents would like to see that. But anything that emanates from Donald Trump's mouth is absolutely abhorrent. You must resist. You must stand up against it. But that leads me to where we are now. Donald Trump says something about redistricting in red states, like where we are here in Texas. The Texas legislature says, okay, we'll have a special session. We can look at this. And they say, yeah, we can look at, well, we're not going to count illegals. We can look at our last election, 2024. We can look at the population shift that is coming here. And I think there's some things that can be done differently about congressional redistricting. In the state of Texas, we have 38 members of the United States House of Representatives. You're always going to have 2 senators. So 38 in our congressional delegation. Currently, 25 of those are Republican. 12 are Democrat. 1 is an open seat. That's the open seat down in Houston because Sylvester Turner, the member of Congress who was a former mayor of the city of Houston, passed away in office, have not had a special election for that. 38 seats, 25, 12, 1 vacant. Well, you might as well have said 13 because Sylvester Turner was a Democrat. Donald Trump won the state of Texas by 15 percentage points in the November 2024 election. Even Ted Cruz was successful with a 10-point victory over Colin Allred in the Senate race. Those are the 2 preeminent statewide races from the November 2024 election. And so now we're going to go back and say, maybe, just maybe, the state of Texas should reflect its voting pattern. 12 of 14 counties, 12 or 14 border counties in the state of Texas went for Donald Trump. So this whole thing about, you're messing up minorities and Hispanics and blacks. No, I hate to tell you, that's not the case. So we have gone back here in the state of Texas in this special session coming off the 89th legislature and redrawn the maps. There are potentially up to 5. That's it. 5 congressional districts that could, flip. And even still, that could lead the Democrats with 7 to 8. But no, that's just not good enough. You darn authoritarian enemies of democracy. How dare you redistrict your state maps? Even though, we as Marxists, leftists, Democrats, we wanted to have illegals counted in the census. So it would provide us advantage when it came to redistricting. Eric Holder, that guy who should be in jail because of Operation Fast and Furious. I'm not talking about a movie, Operation Fast and Furious, where Border Patrol agent Brian Terry lost his life. Eric Holder is in charge of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. He's upset. Should be in jail, but he's upset. And the left is upset. The same leftists who continue to say that we want Puerto Rico and District of Columbia, that place where all the crime and criminality is happening, we want those places to be states. Why do you think they want them to be states? Well, they'll tell you, so that we can get more congressional representation. We don't like the fact that we have a 6-3, pretty much so, constitutional conservative Supreme Court. We want to add, 6, maybe, more Supreme Court justices. Of course, they would all be ours. Those are the type of things they openly talk about. But now that we have had Texas state Democrats in the House and the Senate, and let me explain to you the composition of the Texas State House. The composition of the Texas State House is 150 seats. Always stays at 150 seats because there's 150 Psalms. It is 88 to 62. 88 to 62. 150, you got to have 100 to have that quorum. Well, 56 Democrats fled the state. I mean, they didn't just go home and just lock themselves in the house and use DoorDash to order food. They left the state of Texas. This has happened before. 2011, they went to Oklahoma. 4 years ago in 2021, they went to Washington, D.C., wined and dined and treated like kings and queens by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Maybe they even got a chance to touch the auto pen. But see, when you don't have consequences and ramifications severe enough, then they came back and they've done it again here in 2025. So 56 Democrats left out of the Texas State House. You don't have a quorum. Now, in the Texas State Senate, where you have 31, because there's 31 proverbs, you have 20 Republicans and 11 Democrats in the Texas State Senate. Sorry. 9 Texas state senators picked up and left. They still do have enough for a quorum because there are 2 Texas state senators who are Democrats, Judith Zaffirini and Chuy Hinojosa, that stayed. You know they're going to get a primary challenge when they're next up for re-election. But they stayed because that's what you're supposed to do. You stay, you have debate, you fight it out. No. 56 Texas state Democrats, bye-bye. 9 Texas state senators, bye-bye. But where they fled to is what makes this a laughable hypocrisy. 9 Texas state senators pick up and fly to the state of Massachusetts. And in her press conference welcoming these individuals to the state of Massachusetts, Governor Maura Healey stood up and said, we will respond in kind with redistricting. Hello, McFly. Someone forgot to tell Governor Healey that the state of Massachusetts has 0 Republican congressional representation. 0. Oh, and oh, by the way, they're joined by Rhode Island, Vermont, Bernie's home place, New Hampshire, just to the north, Hawaii, New Mexico, where I was just last week speaking about a pro-life organization, Connecticut and Delaware, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, Hawaii, New Mexico, Connecticut, and Delaware. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. 8 blue states. 0 congressional Republicans in that delegation for that state. 0. Oh, I forgot to mention, I think it's been that way in Massachusetts for 30 to 31 years. And Ms. Healey, how are you going to respond in kind? I don't know if you can go to negative Republican representation in your congressional delegation. See, the hypocrisy just smacks you in the face. And then the 56 Texas State House members boarded private jets, private jets. And they flew to Illinois with big old Governor Pritzker. Donald Trump won 44% of the state of Illinois. But in the state of Illinois, there are only 2 congressional Republicans in that delegation. Now, he won 44%, but there are only 2 Republicans in the congressional delegation. They got an F. Illinois got an F for fairness in their congressional redistricting. And Governor Pritzker is, again, another one of these, big boisterous types. We're going to respond to this. Likewise, this is a threat to democracy. That's always their fallback. Everything, if they don't do it, it's a threat to democracy if someone else does it. But when they do it, it's perfectly fine. As a matter of fact, Kristen Welker on Meet the Press at NBC pressed Governor Pritzker about this issue. You know what he said? To the truth about redistricting in Illinois, it's a distraction. See, it's just, no, go away. See, because it's rules for thee, but not for me. We can do whatever we want. That's the Marxist socialist, communist, progressive, leftist mentality. Power, control, totalitarianism by any means necessary. So now all of a sudden, down here in the state of Texas, where there are 38 congressional districts, 3 to 5 have been redrawn and shifted. And not in any violation of the Constitution, not in any violation of anyone's rights. And Democrats are fleeing, running away, all over the place. Because they don't want to be part of the process here that they do in all of their states. Have you ever heard about Republican state legislators leaving their state when Democrats are redistricting? Have you ever heard of any Republican in the Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, Hawaii, New Mexico, Connecticut, Delaware state houses or state senate leaving their state during redistricting? There's zero. I guarantee you there's some Republicans. I was just up in Massachusetts in April for the 250th remembrance of the shot being fired that was heard around the world. Lexington, Battle of Lexington. And you want to tell me that there's no Republicans? Or maybe Republicans just don't deserve representation in the halls of the United States Congress from Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, Hawaii, New Mexico, Connecticut, and Delaware. Now, here are the 3 Marxist Democrat, whatever you want to call them, states, blue states, with just 1 Republican House seat. Maryland, Oregon, Maine. Maryland, Oregon, and Maine. You mean tell me that there are so few Republicans in Maryland, Oregon, and Maine that they only can have 1 member of that state's congressional delegation? But as J.D. Pritzker said, that's just a distraction. Go, move along, look somewhere else. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. See, I'm glad that Donald Trump said, let's look at redistricting. I'm glad that the state of Texas stepped up to the plate. Although this whole thing about these Democrats leaving, it was predictable and it could have been preventable. We had them there. We had the maps drawn. They were passed out of committee. They should have been immediately voted on in the Texas State House. But instead, our speaker, Dustin Burrows, gave these people a 4-day recess. It was an adjournment for 4 days. What do you think they're going to do? You gave them a window, especially right when Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, was in Austin, Texas. You could have seen that coming. Now these Texas House members, they went to California, cozying up with Gavin Newsom. The state of California, where Donald Trump won there's a 40 to 43% Republican electorate in the state of California. And I was just out there down in Newport Beach, speaking to the Newport Harbor Republican women a couple of weeks ago. Great women, standing in a beautiful home, looking out over the Pacific Ocean. So 40 to 43% Republican electorate in the state of California, but only 17% Republicans in the California congressional delegation. And these Texas Democrats ran to California to try to seek cover. And this is what Gavin said. I mean, this is pretty funny. Gavin stood there at a microphone and said, the Republicans have drawn first blood. Now, for those of y'all that are old enough to remember, in the original movie Rambo, that's what Rambo said. Gavin Newsom is not Sylvester Stallone. He is certainly not John Rambo, but those Republicans drew first blood. Okay, so you're in a state with only 17% Republicans in your congressional delegation when you have 40 to 43% Republicans voting in your electorate. When you look at the state of California, the whole Central Valley is red. Down to Orange County, red. But, you go to Oregon. It's red all over the place except for Portland and Eugene, pretty much so. Portland, the home of Antifa. where they burned down and attacked federal buildings. But that's not an insurrection. Blue states with 2 to 5 Republican House seats. Colorado, Minnesota, and of course, Minnesota is about to maybe vote this Omar Fateh to be its mayor in Minneapolis. Another Mamdani type, Marxist, anti-Semite, Islamic jihadist. Illinois, Virginia, New Jersey. Those are the blue states with 2 to 5 Republican House seats. And like I said, California and New York they're just right there at the cusp. I think they have about 6. So even with the redistricting here in Texas, Democrats will still almost have, well, more congressional delegates than 18 of 50 blue states. They still have a voice. They're not at 0. Now, this whole threatening of we're going to redistrict more, from where? You squeezed all the juice out of that orange. That's an empty threat, especially when you consider the fact that when you look at these major blue states, they're bleeding population left and right. Remember, the Biden administration actually cheated Texas and Florida out of congressional districts. 2 here in Texas, 1 in Florida, because of the population shifts coming out of California, coming out of New York. That population shift is going to increase even more so out of New York when you elect the Islamic jihadist and Marxist Zohran Mamdani as the mayor of New York City. See, I think when you look at California or any of these quote unquote sanctuary states, there's a reason why they don't want Tom Homan and ICE coming into sanctuary states. Because those are their constituents. You know, those people here illegally that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris allowed to come into the country. They're counting them for congressional representation. Or representation at the state level, representation at the local level. I think states like California and New York, they are overrepresented. They don't want these truths to become out. As Pritzker said, that's a distraction. And then there was Nancy Pelosi, who had to just throw her 2 cents worth in here. She said the whole reason why Republicans are doing this redistricting thing in Texas is because Republicans are out of ideas. Yeah. That's kind of like when she said we have to pass the bill in order to find out what's in it. You know, it's getting to the point where I don't blame these delusional, deranged, borderline demonic people who call themselves Democrat elected officials, Marxists. I'm starting to wonder about the sanity of the people that vote for them. Maybe there's a moment like the epiphany that Saul had in his conversion to become Paul. Maybe that happens. But it appears to me that for 30 to 35%, it just doesn't. I mean, you flip over to MSNBC and you listen to Rachel Maddow. And what is she ranting about now? We're part of an American authoritarianism, an American dictatorship. See, only a person that has a mental instability would say that. Coming on the heels of an administration that, Democrat, that allowed tens of millions of people to come into this country legally and gave them benefits. An administration that even when the Supreme Court, even when their own Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, said, you don't have the enumerated power in the Constitution to grant relief of college student loan debt. They did it anyhow. Didn't hear anything, not a thing from Rachel Maddow then. Or when you're being told what type of stove you can have in your house, what type of house you can build. When you're being told what type of dishwasher you can have, what type of shower head you can have, how much toilet water you can flush, what type of car you can have, you're being told that your children are not your own. That's not authoritarianism. That's not a dictatorship. See, this gang, hard to call them a political party, but this gang of Marxists, they're playing a very dangerous game. Because what they're doing is they are projecting upon everyone else that does not get on board with them what they're actually doing. Anti-Semitism, mostly on the left, but yet they call everyone Nazis. Authoritarianism, that's the basis of Marxism. When you have someone like a Zoran Mamdani who is standing up and saying that billionaires shouldn't exist, what are you going to do with them? Well, history tells us what leftist regimes have done with people that they don't like, they don't think should exist. They make them not exist. Hundreds of millions. Killing fields of Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, Stalin, Lenin, Hitler. I can go on forever. Government-run grocery stores. You want to talk about being out of ideas? Government-run grocery stores? Brandon Johnson, mayor of Chicago, said that. Omar Fateh, who is running to be the mayor of Minneapolis, he believes the same thing. You know, that's the kind of stuff that took one of the most prosperous nations in the world, in this Western Hemisphere, definitely, one of the most prosperous nations, Venezuela, and turned it into a cesspool where people were actually going to the zoo to kill animals to get meat. That's what we want. So this whole redistricting thing has really elevated that derangement to a new level because it has shown the blatant hypocrisy of these Marxist leftists. We will make our states completely blue. We will not allow any opposition to have a voice in our states. But damn you if you try to do that in your red state. They don't have an ethical, moral, constitutional ground to stand on. But they will continue to stand on it because something's wrong up here with these people. Now, if you want to see the greater days of the United States of America, if you want to see the preservation of our constitutional republic, we're coming up on 250 years. Alexander Fraser Tytler would tell us we're some 50 years past our expiration date. But it will require people who will be steadfast and loyal to the sovereignty, to the principles, to the fundamentals, to the foundations of these great United States of America. Because if we allow this other side to have any control or control any of the levers of power, if we allow them to get back into the White House, if we allow them to ever have a majority in the House and Senate, that's what 2026 is really about. The legislative agenda for the United States of America. If they control it, Katie barred the door. And the only people that are steadfast and loyal can prevent that.
Before they burn it down.